want to talk about this case even further. It's one we've followed extremely closely. Let's do that with our friend legal analyst Seth Berenzweig. He joins me. Seth, good to see you. I know you've been on this story throughout the course of the day here, but the judge here giving Khalil's lawyers until April the 23rd. They're getting some time here to file applications for relief to stop his deportation to either Syria or Algeria. So he's not being deported immediately, though he is eligible for deportation. What was the judge's rationale here?
The judge's rationale was pretty straightforward in this case, and it led to a result that was not in the least bit surprising. The rationale was that for Mahmoud Khalil to be able to remain in the United States as a green card holder would be inconsistent with the national security interests and foreign policy interests of the United States. This was a result that was correct and was absolutely on point. The evidence in the case, as was discussed in the hearing today, was entirely clear that he was extremely disruptive on campus. He was leading violent protests that were handing out literature by Hamas, and that those were produced by Hamas, specified terrorist organizations, obviously providing support in violent clashes on American campuses to support recognized terrorist organizations is inconsistent with the national security interests and the foreign policy of the United States. But if that wasn't enough, there was plenty of more icing on the immigration cake. There was a lot of evidence in the case, as will continue to evolve here, that he led violent protests. One of the protests resulted in a violent break-in and vandalizing of a building where they took a janitor hostage. They beat a security guard so badly that he was rushed to the hospital. They were shoving students out of the building who were not able to study. Police officers were involved. So there was plenty of evidence. The result was not surprising. An appeal is around the corner. That will likely fail as well.
So, Seth, there was also this memo penned by Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and in it was obtained by the Associated Press. It does not allege, they say, any criminal conduct by Khalil, who is a legal permanent resident. He did have a green card up until he was detained here. So if there's no criminal conduct, again, the rationale, I think that is what people are having a tough time with here. If he does not have a criminal record, he's not being accused of a crime per se.
He hasn't been charged with a crime, but he's being accused of criminal conduct. The only bar that he would have to be able to have a potentially viable defense would be freedom of speech. But let's be very clear. He is not a speech martyr. He is an advocate of a violent terrorist organization. You know, one of the things that I found so ironic in this case, which, by the way, the level of complexity and controversy is much higher at level than the actual complexity of the case, which, as we're discussing now, is really pretty straightforward. He was arguing and complaining to the judge today about his continued detention in a facility. One of the ironies about this case is that he does not have to be in detention. He could agree to leave the United States and he'd be on a plane tonight. Compare that to Eden Alexander, who was in chains in a tunnel in Gaza, a resident of New Jersey who is now in a death tunnel in Gaza. So for him to actually indicate that he needs to be charged with a crime, incorrect. To indicate that he is somehow able to hide behind the First Amendment, also flatly incorrect, which is why when he files his appeal by the 23rd of this month, he will probably lose that as well.
So, Seth, I have to ask you as well. The judge here said the determination that Khalil poses is, quote, adverse foreign policy consequences for the U.S. that are facially reasonable. You were comparing or contrasting his plight to Eden Alexander, one of the Hamas hostages there, who is a dual Israeli-American citizen. But lastly, I have to ask, though, this. When this is appealed and it gets to the next court, will they understand and agree to that rationale that it is facially reasonable?
I think it's very likely that the answer is yes. They probably will support this. Now, keep in mind that there's a parallel proceeding in federal court in Newark, New Jersey, where they're trying to get a second bite at the apple in front of a federal judge. The federal judge is keeping a close eye on this. He's asked for counsel to keep him closely apprised of the situation, because once this hearing in Louisiana is completed, it will probably have a significant impact, if not just a terminating impact, on the New Jersey case. But one of the final ironies of this case is that when Khalil thought that he was actually acting as a leader for violence on campus, he actually is turning out to be a leader of a legal blueprint that the State Department and the custody officials at ICE are going to use as a roadmap to get rid of hundreds of other students that are now being charged under the same statute. So there'll be a lot of developments on this front in the coming weeks.
All right, Seth Berenzweig, we'll leave it at that. Thanks so much for your time. Have a good weekend.
You too.